welcome to the Real Estate Mogul MD podcast. Thanks for tuning in and taking control of your financial future. This is a show where we not only motivate and inspire, we give you actionable real-world experience to help you live life by design. You'll hear journeys and stories from other physicians, investors, coaches, consultants, and entrepreneurs. And now, here's your host, Brett Riggins. What does psychology and music have to do with real estate anyway? Well, today we're going to find that out. We are speaking with a practicing clinical psychologist who is a published professor, who is also a real estate investor. He's been on countless TV shows, and he is a globally recognized recording artist. Yes, this man does music, psychology, real estate. He does it all. Everybody, please welcome Gabriel Crenshaw to the show, Dr. Gabe. All right, so Dr. Gabe, the most important question I may ask you of this whole conversation is, how does it feel to be Dr. Gabe today?
Wow. These days it feels a lot more comfortable.
Yeah.
But the world is sort of in crisis right now, and so patients are in crisis. So it also sometimes feels overwhelming because there's this idea inherent in the doctor moniker that I have all of the answers. I'm not one of those dudes that has a God complex, to develop the intrapsychic of every person, and adjust it to what I think is perfect. So it's comfortable and overwhelming, actually. Nobody's ever asked me that.
Yeah, man. Well, I love the smile and the happiness for the listeners out there. Dr. Gabe, just a little bit about kind of your background and journey into this world. And you are a practicing psychologist currently, correct? So give us just a little bit about, I got the blessing of being able to do a little research on you and, read your bio. And I'm seeing a lot of stuff in there, and you are a very active man. And congratulations, first of all, on the successes that your journey has brought.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
So tell us a little bit about, where you got started and kind of where you're at now.
Wow. You know what? The whole doctor thing, becoming a clinical psychologist, really, for me, honestly, Brett, was sort of an internal struggle. I've always been the kind of guy that everybody came to with their problems. And I probably got to a point in my 20s where I knew that there was a name for what people were going through. I just didn't know what it was. And I'm a perpetual student, so I felt ignorant. I really did, because it was more than, oh, wow, just I'll be your sounding board. I wanted to know what it was called. People had some real interesting stuff. And I was a musician, and I was working as a successful musician. I bought my first house off of music.
Wow.
I discovered how crazy how crazy the music industry is. And then I realized how crazy I was. So I started developing. I took the spotlight off of everybody else and turned it on to me. And I had one central question, and that was how to explain how people who have all the answers for everybody on stage, and yet their lives are a mess and they live in $1 million slums. Mm-hmm. People will pay, their rent money to go to your concert. They will watch you slam a ball, dunk a ball. They'll watch you run through the end zone. They'll go to your movie. You seemingly have all the answers. And I saw a lot of these people were really broken, and I didn't want to be one of them. Yeah. So I did a complete turnaround and started seeking out schools. And I'm from Ohio, and I left Cincinnati my senior year in college. Mm-hmm. I had to finish my senior year, and I went directly into graduate school. And my question, which initially started my dissertation, was the intrapsychic development of entertainers.
Interesting.
What I was really finding out was the intrapsychic development of Gabriel. I did not want to be screwed up. I wanted to go beyond what my parents were. Not that they weren't wonderful people, but I wanted to go beyond anything that I had ever seen in my life. And that meant intellectually, educationally, financially, in every way. And I'm a suburban kid, but I wanted more. Mm-hmm. And I had to make my peace with wanting more.
So very interesting what you're saying there, Gabe, is for me, when I hear that, self-realization is the beginning of self-development. And that snap, that point in you when you can learn two things, learn things that you don't know, and then learn what that means. I mean, those are massive pieces. And the other thing in there, very interesting, was that psyche as an entertainer. I am also, I would say I'm a musician, just because I have passion for music and this crazy addiction to somehow make these sounds come out of this weird instrument. I don't know what it is or why I have that addiction. But in that path, I've also been around people who, have made that their life's journey. And it's so crazy when you sit back and you look at the pain, like when you really know somebody behind the social media, behind the videos, behind the tracks on the radio, and you see the pain that's driven in order to connect with people. I mean, it's crazy. So that switch for you to figure that out is awesome. I mean, the pain is not awesome, but that self-realization, that flip, Yeah.
Well, Brett, but the pain can be awesome too. I mean, you said it, it's what connects. And that is one of the central problems of why a lot of entertainers and successful people, and not just in entertainment in Hollywood, but I see it with business moguls and everything. Whatever that fear is, whatever that drive, they think that's the drive necessary to fuel them to keep going. The trick is to find out a way to be healthy and still have the drive and the fuel to keep going. It will actually propel you further, I believe. But we recognize the pain because the world in general, a lot of times, is in pain, right? Mm-hmm. And so we want to feel that. And everybody says the same thing about a good singer. They made me feel like they connected, like I just, I tapped into that pain. It's killing them.
Yeah.
But it makes you feel great.
Yeah. Yeah. That connection of, and one of the most recent pieces, and it's just looking back in my mind of this connection of pain. There's actually a country music singer called Jelly Roll, and this gentleman, I mean, just you can see his life has been broken, and you can almost see the brokenness in him. But the connection that he's made with millions and millions of people because they connect with that pain, they connect with that suffering piece.
Right.
But I guess, the real opportunity, the beauty in that pain is now there's opportunity in gain, in growth, in joining and, being a group with each other. It's all about, what we can do from there and leading by example. And I think, that switch that you had and that realization of, hey, what's Gabe doing here? I want to learn a little bit more about that.
Growing up his life.
Yeah. So the music piece is awesome too. So all of this too. And it also makes me think, Gabe, of the so-called life of a doctor, right? Doctors are rich. And for the listeners can't see me throwing my fingers up in the air. This doctors are rich thing. And in these choices and decisions that we make, that are made, I apologize, I'm not a physician, so I can't say that we make, but that are made in this situation where you go from med school into residency, in this path, and then all of a sudden you feel like you've got to make these decisions to keep up with the status quo. And I think that ties into the musician thing where everything's great. I know I have the answer for everything, but on the inside, that's not it. So tell us a little bit about your take on that. Keeping up with the Joneses kind of feel as physicians. Like what's going on in our psyche on something like that?
I think there's a societal expectation. We are socialized from the time we are children, are we not? Honey, marry, we tell our girls, marry what? A doctor, right? Right. A lawyer, but a doctor is always first, right?
Conditioning.
Absolutely, because there is something to be said for it. First of all, it's a noble profession, and you need it in order for the world to heal and to survive, just physically, right? But then it's also the top of the food chain, right? Mm-hmm. And I did my first internship at Children's Hospital, so I worked with surgeons, primary care physicians, and there is a pecking order. You do not call you don't call a surgeon. Make the mistake of categorizing him as a primary care physician. I found that out. And ego has a lot to do with it too. And even with us as well, there were many people who went to school to be God, to be able to construct people's lives and tell them what to do, and they'll do it just because I said. And that carries over into, I need all the accoutrements, right, to follow. I can't just be a God complex. You know, I walk on the streets of gold, you know, and I walk with Jasper, and I drive a Benz or a Bentley. And that is necessary because that image suggests I'm a good doctor, right?
Yeah.
Because I couldn't get the bikes and toys if I wasn't a great doctor. And if I'm a great doctor, people will pay. Now, that's really a very crude explanation of it, but I have seen that. I'm speaking from experience. And the other side is we put in a lot of the hardworking side of it is when you've put in about 14 years of your life, and I'm talking after high school, right? Even if you do 4 years, you still have another about 10 years to go between medical school, graduate school, pre-doc, postdoc, residential, all of that, setting up the practice, you know, before you're out the gate and running. And so a lot of people have already started their careers, man. So in order to make it worth it, I got to make more money than you.
And it kind of like relating that reward or that value hierarchy. I'm not this if I don't have this.
Exactly.
You know, and then those values will then direct our actions in the way that we prioritize things.
Right.
And in comes the lifestyle creep, right? This idea of, okay, as my income then increases, so do my expenses. And it's just this never ending battle. You're building a machine that's going to kill you.
Yeah, well, you should know. I mean, you wrote a book, How to Become a Rich Doctor, which I bought, by the way, on Amazon.
Come on, Dr. Gabe.
I like the whole leveraging passive income and all that stuff that you talk about. But anyway, I'm always down with that because I've loved, I think I started in graduate school. I really got into Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. But before him, Susie Orman. Susie Orman's book called The Courage to Be Rich. It changed my life. Let me tell you how serious it was. I have that book marked just as much as she does. I think I've written in that book just as much as she did. And I remember I was in graduate school and I was on the bus. Car broke down and I was on the bus. And that's a whole other thing. I mean, my God, see, that's part of the suffering that we go through. Yeah. You know, and I felt like I had given up an awful lot inside the entertainment business. I mean, I bought a house because I can write a song. And then I decided to go back to school. I'm going to be broke. Absolutely.
Gabe, just so everybody knows, having spent some time being a musician, not only sleeping on a couch, sleeping on somebody else's couch, right? So there's a whole thing of being able just enough to pay the group of guys that you're paying with, let alone buying a house. So that in itself, I want the listeners to know who don't play music, like that is like mind blowing in the music business, you know?
It was for me. I did it. I sure did. Awesome. Yeah. And in my 20s. Wow. At the end of my 20s, so I was dedicated. But the whole that notion that you're speaking to, I was so dedicated that I was on the bus. I was reading the book. I left the book on the bus. Okay, I didn't discover it until I got home.
Oh wow!
I called Lost and Found Metro here in California, and I tracked that book down. They found the bus that I was on. Contacted the bus driver. He says, I found the book is in Lost and Found. I know where Lost and Found is for the public transit system in Los Angeles. I went and got that book back. That's how important it was for me.
The writing in that book. I mean, there's so much.
Because that was all my lessons. It was everything I needed to know. And I knew some things was ahead of me, but I knew I was going to need it at some point. I did not want to be an illiterate doctor. It's more than just making a lot of money and then you just spend. That's stupid. That's really that's the intrapsychic development of really a poverty mentality, because the fear is I'm going to end up like the very thing I don't want. Well, what happens? Because that's where your mind is. That's exactly the road you go down. The universe is really clear. We don't get what we say we want. We get what we unconsciously push either in or out, because that's where the energy is.
Yeah. What you give energy grows.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So
There's probably a whole nother lesson in life itself. The lost and found department there in Los Angeles from the metro area. I can
all right.
imagine the craziness there, buddy. Holy cow.
Yes.
So this book, one more time, who was the writer and the name of that book that you were mentioning?
That is Susie Orman. Susie, and she spells it S-U-Z, like zebra, E, Orman, O-R-M-A-N. The name of the book is called The Courage to Be Rich. The Courage to Be Rich.
So to me, and a lot of stuff in the book, How to Get Rich as a Doctor, like the biggest thing is mindset. So the courage to get to the courage to be rich, right? Is that idea? It seems like I have not read the book yet. I'm going to get it and read it. It's so much in the mind, right?
It's
and
all
where
in the mind.
Starts.
Well, of course, which is why I became a doctor, because I wanted to discover the intrapsychic development of Gabriel. And then when I got into Carl Jung, I realized, as he says, it's the theory of contagion, that if you go deep enough into my mind and deep enough into your mind, Brett, and all the millions of people listening to your podcast, we are all the same. There is just one of us here. And then I discovered as a doctor, everybody has a prefrontal cortex, right? That's our thinking center. That's where we do our judgment, insight, etc. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then there is also the subcortical region of the brain where the fear is, called the amygdala, and where all the emotion is, which triggers the autonomic nervous system, that fight or flight thing. And so depending on where you are in your journey, either you are running away from something or you're running towards something. But very often do we consider, if we stand still and regulate the mind and find peace of mind, all things come to you. So then you don't fall into the you don't fall into the trap of, I'm a doctor, therefore I must live this way. Right? I must have this zip code. I must drive this kind of car. It's not even enough now, especially in LA, to drive a Mercedes. Now it has to be like a 500 or a Maybach. You know, and then when the Maybach is, well, now you got to go to a Bentley. You know, it's like, and people who drive C300s, like, that's not a real Benz.
Yeah.
What is that?
That's crazy. And the first time I saw a Maybach, it was like, I recognize the shape of this car, but that name just does not look right.
Right. Because they took the body build basically from the 500.
Yeah.
In the 90s, the 500, S classes, with the dual pane windows and stuff like that, which I had to have one.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting how like this non-spoken but very clear levels of these hierarchies are built through this. That's interesting. So we've got this book from Susie. You mentioned Kiyosaki, and these could be the starts of many people's foundation. And when I say foundation, Gabe, I'm talking about that seed. Mm-hmm. That seed of curiosity that's planted. Mm-hmm. And once that thing starts growing, it leads into different ideas and hopefully into different steps. And those actual steps of implementing knowledge, turning that knowledge into wisdom by real world application. How did that lead you into real estate? Like you bought that first house when you were a musician, right? Tell me a little bit about that path for you as an investor.
I'm from Ohio, and by the time you're 30, you're supposed to have a house. At least that's how I grew up. So see, it started as a foundation.
Yeah.
Right. I found out in California, people have roommates and they all live together until they're 50. That's weird for me. I get it.
Yeah.
No judgment. I get it now, but I did not come from that. And when you make a certain amount of money, you have to invest it. You don't keep buying Armani. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
You don't go out and buy a bunch of cars. That stuff depreciates in value. You better get yourself some real estate. Now, when I was 19, I started dipping into, oh God, why am I drawing a blank? Wall Street, into stocks and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And so I joined, I went to Dane Whittier. They had a cruise ship thing, and I went on that. And then I got into Kemper. And I did a Kemper Total Return Mutual Fund. That was my entree into everything. It was great. And that's actually, that money matured to a degree. I took it out, and that's the money I came to California on. So see, I saw very early on, if you put some money away, particularly with some financial professionals who know what they're doing and let your money grow, can get some dividends and you can live a kind of life. And so that's what I lived on. By the time I became successful enough in music where I saw that I could buy a house, I knew I had to do it. The fear was, what if everything stops and I cannot afford to keep paying the mortgage? I did not let that stop me. I went on ahead and I did it anyway. And once I started looking at houses and saw it's mine, like it's mine. And I could take this house if I wanted to. I could take some equity out of this at a point and I could actually buy something else, and then I took that house. I lived in it for a while and I actually started renting it because I was still by this time now I'm in school. But my mindset was the foundation, but also I think Oprah Winfrey say, I don't trust stocks. I don't understand the stock market. I understand real estate. And that stuck with me. And I wanted real estate. And it didn't matter to me that I was in school. Most people would go, if you're in school, in graduate school, how can you afford a house? Well, my mindset was, how can I not? I had some money. So this is what I decided to do with it. And then I never looked back,
And before we started talking, I heard you say the word landlord, and I'm interested to see what that means to you in this journey, because it can mean good, it can mean bad, and that sometimes that sways people's path based on their experience being a landlord. So tell us a little bit about what it was like being a landlord.
Yeah, it was tough. The first time I decided to do it, there was a family friend who had a friend, and that friend had a daughter, and she was in need. I always wanted to be able to be of service. Susie Ortman says, people first, the courage to be rich is people first, money, and then things. If you follow that in that order, you'll be just fine. So people first, I wanted to, pay it forward. I was in school and I was now living in, I had an apartment in, actually it was another house, in LA, proper. And I was living there because it was closer to school, but I rented it out. It didn't go very well. This young lady just she just couldn't get it done. She didn't have what it took to maintain the rent, etc. And I was hearing talk about Section 8, but I bought a model home, brand new home, never lived in. And it came with the furniture because when I bought this house, my first one, it was at the end of the phase. So they were actually selling the models. I never even knew that you could buy a brand new house with all the furniture.
Yeah.
It was a 3-2.
Yeah. Nice.
And actually, I had 3 bathrooms, 3 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, and 2-story. And the only thing they didn't let me keep were the plants. So it came fully landscaped already because the phase had been going on for a few years. So the trees were mature, the shrubs were mature. I had everything. It was amazing. Just the feeling and the pride of ownership is real for me. So then that was hit a little bit with a bad tenant. A bad tenant. And so I got her out, got a legal system. I got her out. Somebody said, Gabe, you need to go with a what do you call the people who property manager?
Yep.
So I decided to do that. Didn't go very well.
Oh, no.
And the only reason is, and here's the deal, but let me first say this. That was the one bad tenant, but then all the other tenants were great. They were. Let me tell you how great they were. There was one, I was really asking the universe, I wanted a family, people first, money, and then things. And this guy approached me and said, I've got my wife, we're building our family, and we want to buy a house. We want to be like you. Can we rent your house? They said we will pay $100 more. And at that time, they were paying me $950 a month for the house.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
In LA.
In LA, yeah.
Wow.
And which was amazing. But my house was in the valley. So it wasn't going to cost as much. And this was in the early 2000s. This was around, this was actually like 1999, somewhere in there.
Okay.
Yeah. So they paid, not only did they pay on time, they sent me the check early. They said, we're going on vacation. They sent me the check and for the subsequent month until they got back. They were the best tenants in the world. When they said, we're finally going to open escrow, they kept me hip to the whole process and everything. The best tenants. That followed up with another good tenant. They lost their job and wasn't able to do it. That's when I turned to a property management company. They were tied to one of these major real estate outfits. I won't say which one it was. And the liaison there loved my house for his fiance, and he wanted to buy the house. I said, I don't want to sell my house. And all of a sudden, the property management people couldn't find a tenant. I was in school. I was now doing my internship. I was paying rent where I was in LA. I was paying the mortgage there at that house and in graduate school, and I ended up having to sell it. But I didn't lose it. See, I was smart. Right. What I wish I had known was that I could have gone to some companies and stuff like that, or to the bank and said, hey, I'm having an issue right now with the tenant. I don't want to lose the house. What can I do? But I was so ashamed. It was my first house, and the way I bought it, I felt so proud of myself. And the last thing I knew I could do was lose it. That's shame on the Crenshaw name. You don't do that. So it's like you sell it and take the proceeds. Eventually you'll buy something else.
Interesting. And through that too, Gabe, like there's in real estate, like single family, that's my niche. And looking, since we've gone virtual, basically acquiring anywhere, the cost of acquiring in California, different in 2000. I don't know perspective to the value of the dollar then, but the cost of acquiring in LA versus the income that it generates, and then the laws around evictions. Right. So those two things paired together would probably keep me out of acquisitions for long-term holds in California, let alone in LA. So I can't imagine that journey in of itself, man.
Well, let me say, I have to say this too. I come from a line of uncles, well, great uncles, my grandmother's brothers. They all owned property. Okay. And these are men who weren't really educated, but they were smart about money. See, that's what I discovered too. A lot of doctors fancy themselves as an expert of all things. We are doctors. We are an expert in one area, but there are a myriad of subjects out here. And that is why a lot of people who you wouldn't think would be financially literate and certainly literate about real estate can actually surpass a lot of doctors. We have to pay attention. My uncle had my great uncle had a third grade education. When I got out here to California, they had a house, and then he was at this apartment building, an apartment complex. And so he was 70 something years old by then. And he's up on the ladder. And I was like, my God, I can't believe you up here on the ladder and said, Uncle Clavin, just, I'll do it. And so we're talking, we go out to lunch, et cetera, and everything. And they've been telling me his wife would say he's at the apartment building. One day I was talking to my uncle. He was on top of the garages. And I said, Uncle Clavin, really? I was like, you know what? I'm going to call the owner. This is elder abuse, et cetera. And he just looked at me and started laughing. And I said, what's so funny? He says, well, you'd be calling me.
Right.
I said, I'm sorry. He said, well, they tell me I own this. It was paid for.
Oh, wow.
Wow. He had a bunch of tenants in there. And I looked at him and I thought, if he can do that, they had a 10-acre ranch out in near Palm Springs. I have to. And I learned a lot just from watching him and how he was with money. And he loves land. I do too. I love land. I love real estate. I love the idea of being able to provide a home for people. I haven't really gotten into like the fixer-upper thing, and I know you did the fixer-upper thing. Like you could have had your own television show on HGTV.
Yeah.
That still scares me a little bit. If I had some partners, I might be willing to do that.
Yeah.
Uh,
There's more risk. I mean, it's warranted. I mean, there's a little more risk in there, and then it comes down to, picking your lane. And I think you said it perfectly in that story about your uncle too, like knowing that specific piece. And there's so many different things that we can learn of. If you pick a lane, stay in your lane. And then when you do shoot off a little bit, I call it a 1-degree pivot, right? Just this little pivot off of that. So in those regards of flipping versus buying and holding, because really, if you find a value add property, you're going to flip it. You're just going to hold it. Right. So I'm still going to use those repairs to force that equity in there. And then on a BRRRR strategy, buy, renovate, rent, refinance, and then repeat. I'm going to use that equity that we've created, and I'm going to decrease my down payment. So that increases my returns. But it's all having the right people around you, having the right questions, the right state of mind. It's all huge, and staying in the lane is a piece of it. I love the fix and flip thing. And you're right, Gabe. We, at one point, my wife and I were doing 6 at a time. And I know I've got colleagues that are doing 10, 20 at a time. So it doesn't compare to that. But let me tell you what, that can be a headache. Oh my goodness.
I bet.
And every time, for me, I like flips on long-term rentals because I need it nice, neat, clean, and mechanically sound. I need to provide a beautiful, safe home for a new family. And when I'm flipping for what I call like kill and eat kind of money to go out and get it, so that's when I was like moving walls, and boy, every time that you put another dollar on that renovation budget, it increases your risk. So especially moving walls, man, it's just crazy.
Yeah. Load bearing and all that stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So my background is architectural engineering, construction management engineering. So you talk about that pride thing, and it's always what got me in trouble, being self-employed as opposed to being an entrepreneur or business owner. Is I can do that. Yeah. I can do that. I know I can handle this. Right.
Right.
So yeah. So that was a change in of itself. But, man, so all of this real estate going on, and there's still, even for me, I think one of the greatest blessings that I was ever given was the fact that I never went somewhere on music, because my life, my stack of opportunities and experiences are all together, and I wouldn't change it for anything. But that music will never leave me. I'm still so passionate about it. And I still hear things in music that I think, not necessarily gifted, but I still have an ear, right? I still hear these things, and I love it so much. And I will always be in music. Music will always be around me. Music will also be around you, Gabe. It'll be in you. It'll be coming out of you. And speaking of coming out of you, you've got a new single you're about to release. So besides all this medical stuff, all this real estate stuff, all this TV stuff that we haven't even talked about, Gabe, you got this new single coming out. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, this one is called Part of Yours. It's the follow-up to my very first single, which was called Finding My Father, which was about my dad. It's R&B soul pop, and it's a labor of love. I've always believed that music and psychology go together, because I found psychology as a result of music, and then rediscovered music as a result of psychology, and then the psychology of writing a song and the passion that goes into it for the artist as well as the listener, and everything that you just said. And so now I'm back in it, but as an indie artist, right?
Interesting.
And independent artist is wonderful. The music is being played currently in London and Amsterdam and Germany and Canada and just everywhere, because now the internet has opened everything wide up. So we no longer have to ask the king in the same way. Mm-hmm. So we can argue with the landlord and decide, you know what, I'm going to own the building. I'm going to own the rights right? To my own song, my own music, my own publishing. But I had all that stuff early on, so it doesn't frighten me. It's the need to get it out. And I think this is the most important thing. I became a doctor because it was a passion. I had a big question. I was born a musician. I was born a singer. I was born a songwriter. I'm only returning to that love. I never really left it. It was the sanity that got me through graduate school. God knows it gets me through patience, and it's informed a lot of the writing that I do. And now I'm at a point where I want to share the music and the psychology, put it into a podcast. I might I'm developing that too, and it'd be great to have you come on mine.
Absolutely, yeah, that'd be great.
Because I love what you're doing. I mean, I've been watching, man, and so. But no, the music is an integral part. Quincy Jones says we need music like we need air and water. You can't separate. And I made the fatal mistake when I was in graduate school, and this is really important for any listener out there. Like you said, you need to know your lane. I'm an African-American dude, and there was a long time that in this country we grew up, we could entertain the world. We could sing and dance. Those Black people, they sure can sing and dance and play football and basketball. My mother always pushed education, not to the exclusion of music, because that was important to her as well. But she was like, be more. And I heard something different. I was ashamed to be a musician. I spent a few years in school where people would say, you're a musician, because I look like one. I got the energy of one and everything. I'll say, no, I'm a graduate student. I'm an intern at Children's Hospital. I'm sorry, I look like a musician. Well, I'm not a musician. How stupid. Like, I wasted time because I was ashamed of being what and who I am. And so now I'm back into music under my own name, doing my own music. It's super important to me, and it's just as important to me as being Dr. Gabriel Crenshaw. Yeah. I don't separate the two. I am that, and I am he, and I'm all the Gabriels. And that is the stuff that can keep you sane, even as a doctor, whether it's MD, PhD, whatever, is that you don't forget fundamentally who you are, and you are here to serve. That will help to keep you humble. It doesn't matter what you're driving. And so whatever you're doing, where you're living, it's the service that you're giving. And so real estate can be a service and tied into your doctor stuff or whatever it is. It's a service, and it's a marvelous thing. At least that's how I see it. And that's how it's working for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to let you know this, that nowhere ever are our lives a straight line. And, we meander, sometimes we turn a complete circle, but we're always moving forward. And especially in your path, in your journey, Gabe, I assure you that each one of those challenges created change, but it created positive change. So looking back, it may feel that, maybe if it would have gone differently, or I hid this way, I think those were shaping your character. And, for your mother to lead you in a way that it made you, you are a humble dude. Like, I'm looking at you, you are a genuine, humble dude, and our conversation has been great. And your successes along this journey have been great as well too. So without challenge, there is no change. And that change is held positive when we hold our eyes on the right thing. And our eyes can direct us. So as long as we're keeping our eyes on the positive things, our journeys are twisting, meandering, twisted, crazy, sometimes dark. Coming from the music world, you're paid to be in the dark. You're paid to do things you're paid with things you shouldn't be doing, right? All of this stuff. It's a different path. But if you step back and look at where you started and keep your eyes on where you're going, all of that stuff creates character.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, man. So, hey, we're gonna this new single coming out, this podcast. I'm excited. I love talking, and my wife always tells me I've got the gift of the gab, and I just love talking. So I would love to come onto the show, talk real estate. Maybe we can vibe off of one another, because I have not heard this song yet about why it's important to invest in real estate. So maybe we could put something down on that, huh? Come on.
Put that out there. We go put that out there. I got it. Hey, I got DJs, man. I already
That's
know.
right. Yeah. Spit it back, man. Absolutely. Let's plant that seed early. People be in med school dancing like, God, all of a sudden I just want to invest in real estate. I don't know what's going on. Man, it's been a blast. Thank you for your time, Gabe. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Brett. Seriously.
And if everybody wants to reach you and connect with you, it's Ask Dr. Gabe everywhere. So it's AskDrGabe. That's LinkedIn. That's Instagram. The .com is the website where they can directly connect with you, right?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
AskDrGabe.com.
And then you also gave me a phone number too. Is you want to hear from people that much that you give out your phone number?
I'm a servant, man. I'm a servant.
People first.
People first, money, then things.
That's awesome. So we'll put this phone number in the description of this podcast too. It's 310-496-4277.
Yes.
So 310-496-4277. And man, much gratitude. And man, congratulations. It's so awesome to see the success in your life and the happiness that it's cultivated in you. I'm sure you've helped so many people along the way too. So there's so many things we didn't talk about.
Hey, I've certainly tried. And thank you, man. You got a wonderful thing going here. Everybody get his book. If you haven't gotten the book yet, it's a terrific read. And I'm a doctor and I have it. So get it.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man.
Brett. Seriously.
Awesome. Thanks, Gabe. Appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. And to the listeners out there, as always, we thank you for your time, but more importantly, your attention, because even if you were just giving us your time and weren't paying attention, then we wouldn't be giving you any value. So if you have any questions for us, please reach out to us, info@physicianwealthsystems.com. You can send us an email. Check us out on the .com. Let us know who else you want to see if you want to be a guest. If you have any questions at all regarding real estate, mindset, let us know. And until next time, thanks again.